we here at Cultaholic endeavor to bring you provocative media that might challenge your thought process and perhaps even your state of bliss, we don't actually go out of our way to trigger you. See, the video ahead is going to delve into the speediest world title changes under the WWE header, and understandably, some of the incidents ahead might conjure up some old bitter feelings. Just take a deep breath, we're all going to get through this together. It was annoying enough for many fans that the highly skilled Ricochet got bodied without resistance against Brock Lesnar at Super ShowDown, but more irksome was that the eclectic and captivating Fiend character was pummeled in mere minutes by a 53-year-old that clearly needed an oxygen tank more than he needed another wrestling accolade. Since that title switch is both controversial and topical, we're going to put it in historical perspective for you here. This video will look at the quickest WWE World Heavyweight and Universal title changes in history. Before we get started though, a quick caveat: there are no money in the bank cash-ins here, because otherwise the list would be bloody full of them. I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic.com, and these are the 10 quickest WWE World Title Changes. Join us! Number 10, Edge defeats Dolph Ziggler in 3 minutes, 3 seconds. File this one under as pointless as an unsharpened pencil. Edge's ex-wife Vicky Guerrero was still running SmackDown and was now in a relationship with rising star Ziggler. Every chance she got, Vicky tried to scheme the championship off of Edge's waist, even going so far as to ban Edge's finisher, the Spear. In February, Guerrero stripped Edge of the World Heavyweight belt because of him performing the move, and announced the same night that Ziggler was the new champion. But there was little time for Ziggler to celebrate. The championship ceremony on SmackDown was disrupted by returning Teddy Long, who pretty much undid all of Vicky's shenanigans and gave Edge a match then and there against virtual paper champion Ziggler. Using the now reinstated Spear, Edge demolished Ziggler in mere minutes, 3 of them if you were paying attention, and brought us back to square one. Even the member berries don't remember this Ziggler reign, and really, there's not much reason to. Number 9, Goldberg defeats The Fiend in 2 minutes, 57 seconds. Yes, it's a journey to the not-too-recent past and, as noted, an ongoing bone of contention for fans and critics alike. At 53, Goldberg looks to play transitional champion headed into WrestleMania once again, and those denouncing the move believe that he usurped a spot that Bray Wyatt, after 10 months of working his Fiend character into something of a transcendent entity, truly deserved. WWE was apparently painted into a corner, wanting originally to use superhero Goldberg to fall at the Universal Champion's feet like the others before him, but were possibly far too swayed by the increase in SmackDown viewership for Goldberg's TV appearances. And now the SmackDown side of WrestleMania 36 has been reconfigured, hence the result we got. As for the match, well, how long could Goldberg and Wyatt have conceivably gone together? It wasn't going to be a marathon, but what was presented in just under 3 minutes, including the Jackham-plex, only iced the cake. Number 8, Seth Rollins defeats Brock Lesnar in 2 minutes, 30 seconds. This time, there wasn't much complaining at all. While their main event at that year's SummerSlam proved to be an excellent David versus Goliath struggle, this was surprisingly good in a way that few expected, but far fewer took umbrage with. To the astonishment of all, Universal Champion insisted on going on first to get his presumptive mauling of Rollins out the way before going back to finish his outdoorsman periodicals. Then out comes the Beast Slayer, who gets battered around like a cat toy before the bell. It looks like just another chapter in the Lesnar devours some hapless bastard book, only for the tide to turn following the referee briefly being incapacitated. Rollins hit the Beast below the belt, took him down, and then curb stomped his head 3 times en route to the pinfall victory. Very few other entries on this list created the overall jubilation that Rollins' slightly underhanded iconoclasm of the almighty Brock did here, as it was a surprise, and a very pleasant one at that. Number 7, Bruno Sammartino defeats Buddy Rogers in 48 seconds. Math makes my head hurt, so if you want to be the one to calculate how many 48-second matches can fit into a 7-year, 8-month world title reign, go nuts. But yes, Sammartino's titanic run as WWF champion, spanning until early 1971, didn't begin with some epic length struggle that he just barely won, but a veritable squash match over one of wrestling's ace villains, and there was a good reason why. The 42-year-old Rogers had suffered a mild heart attack some time before the title match, and it was decided that Buddy couldn't wrestle a long match lest he ended up dying in the ring, though the public, in more guarded times, was not aware of any of this. Making a quick title switch a little easier was the fact that powerhouse Sammartino was the opponent. At the bell, he stormed the wily champion, quickly wore Rogers down, and hoisted him into his backbreaker submission to draw the surrender. And the rest, as they say, is history. Number 6, Batista defeats John Cena in 33 seconds. It's hard to believe that 10 years have already passed since the Cena vs. Batista feud for the WWE Championship crisscrossed with Vince McMahon's renewed war with Bret Hart. Cena had expressed allegiance to the legendary Hitman sometime before February's Elimination Chamber pay-per-view, in which Cena would challenge along with 4 other men for Sheamus' WWE title. In the end, Cena gutted out a win, last eliminating Triple H. But all was not sunshine, lollipops, and trucker caps for John Cena, because a mean-spirited Vince McMahon crashed the victory celebration. He ordered an impromptu title match right then and there for the new champion, and because you just saw what the title of this entry is, you know who got dispatched down the aisle. It didn't take long for Drax to destroy a worn-out Cena, spearing him into the mat and following up with a thunderous Batista bomb to win the gold. While not a Money in the Bank cash-in, it's still a case of a vulnerable champion falling victim to unfair circumstances. Number 5, Hulk Hogan defeats Yokozuna in 23 seconds. What was that we just said about impromptu title matches? Funny thing was, Hogan actually handled the briefcase earlier in the night, that being IRS's prop Halliburton that he used to smash opponents' heads with. So really, this was sort of a Money in the Bank cash-in before Money in the Bank cash-ins. The only difference was that in story, this wasn't a case of challenger suddenly appearing, it was the stupidity of the champion's handler. Yoko had just defeated Bret Hart for the WWE title in the presumed main event of WrestleMania 9 via salt-related chicanery, and Hogan conveniently ran out to protest the injustice. As he tended to Hart, Yoko's manager Mr. Fuji conveniently challenged Hogan, the embodiment of America, to a title match then and there. After Fuji conveniently missed with a handful of salt, blinding Yoko instead, Hogan dropped the leg on Yoko and won the belt. Fans in Las Vegas were happy at the time, but history has shown Vince's decision to run the Hart-Yoko-Hogan transition that afternoon to be rather short-sighted. Number 4, Goldberg defeats Kevin Owens in 22 seconds. Why, I can hear you gnashing your teeth from here. Cool enough heel Kevin Owens had reigned as Universal Champion for over 6 months, and for a while it seemed like Owens might actually make it to WrestleMania 33 with the gold in hand. Maybe he would wrestle Chris Jericho, the man he just wrecked in the ill-fated Festival of Friendship, and it would be for the belt. If only. Instead, WWE tabbed Goldberg to transition the belt off of Owens and onto the waist of Brock Lesnar, who would go on to hold the gold for over 16 months. Don't do that, dear viewer, you'll break your teeth, seriously. Anywho, Owens' execution date was the Fastlane pay-per-view, and there have been more good December to Dismembers than there have been Fastlanes. He stalled and stalled for a bit, and when the bell finally rang, Jericho distracted him for long enough to fall victim to the same old spear and jackhammer routine in mere seconds. But hey, at least the jackhammer looked serviceable here, so there's that. Right? Number 3, Sheamus defeats Daniel Bryan in 18 seconds. 8 years later, and you still ask why. Make no mistake, the booking of the match did not kill Daniel Bryan. His fanbase proved so rabid and loyal, and his work remained so pristine, that he was going to rebound before long. At the same time you say that, consider poor Sheamus. Some level of boos have followed him in the years since, whether he was a babyface or heel. It's not like it was his fault. Somebody in WWE got it in their head that World Heavyweight Champion Bryan was the modern-day honky-tonk man, and Sheamus the conquering ultimate warrior, and the fans, they would be happy to see the sniveling heel get his just desserts through a jiffy quick defeat. Didn't quite work out that way, did it? With that, WrestleMania 28 opened up in perhaps the most tone-deaf manner possible, casting a sizable shadow over a promising event, until the Hell in a Cell cage lowered anyway. Reload era Metallica, you've saved the day. Number 2, Brock Lesnar defeats Kofi Kingston in 9 seconds. The wound's not as fresh, but boy did this match cut deep for many. 6 months earlier, Kingston realized the dream that once seemed unlikely for a man that bumped his head on the double-paned upper mid-card glass ceiling. Then he floored Daniel Bryan with Trouble in Paradise, pinning him to capture the WWE Championship, while he and his New Day brethren tearfully celebrated. As far as WrestleMania moments go, that is one of the sweetest of the recent lot. In the 6-month reign that followed, Kofi was booked pretty damn strong. The ending, however, The maiden episode of SmackDown on Fox promised Lesnar's first match on free TV in over 15 years. That said, calling it a match is like calling a Tic Tac a meal. Kingston lunged at the muscular brute, who caught him with ease and swung him downward with the F5 for the easiest win this side of a forfeit. Between Kingston being pushed aside for Cain Velasquez and then suddenly being a smiling, blissfully happy mid-carder a week later, the whole thing felt like an elaborate troll job. Number 1, Diesel defeats Bob Backlund in 8 seconds. seconds. A quarter century ago, Vince McMahon set out to create a new Hulk Hogan. He thought he had the answer in the towering Kevin Nash, who backed up his domineering power with a laid-back sense of humor and a naturally calm demeanor. A decade previous, McMahon put Hogan over the Iron Sheik at Madison Square Garden in a 5-minute match to usher the killer wave of Hulkamania, and he cribbed from that formula here. Sheik won that belt by defeating Backlund after a towel of surrender was thrown in to save the injured champ. Backlund in 1994 won the belt by defeating Bret Hart after a towel of surrender was thrown in to save the injured champ. Backlund was now playing the role of Sheik, only he wasn't getting 5 minutes in which to lose the belt inside the Garden. Instead, at the sound of the bell, Truck Hogan kicked Backlund in the gut and immediately jackknife powerbombed him, scoring the title win in just 8 seconds. Dieselmania didn't quite equal Hulkamania in terms of box office returns, to put it mildly, but in fairness, Hogan never won any 8-second matches now, did he?